and with premeditation, which resulted in the death of a human being, to wit, did either kill J.J. Vallow and or assist in the killing of J.J. Vallow and or did encourage the killing of J.J. Vallow.
The case began with a question that should have had a simple answer. Where are the children? In late 2019, relatives of 7-year-old Joshua Jackson Vallow, known to everyone as JJ, were trying to reach him. JJ was adopted, energetic, vulnerable, and deeply loved by his grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock. His older sister, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan, had also vanished from normal life. She was no longer answering messages, she was not posting, she was not showing up where a teenager should show up. At first, the story sounded like a custody dispute or a family that had moved without telling everyone. Chad Daybell, the religious author she had recently married, appeared distant. When police began asking questions, the answers did not match the facts. One person was told JJ was with a friend. Another was told Tylee was at college. Investigators would later learn that neither answer was true. The deeper police looked, the stranger the case became. There was a dead husband in Arizona. There was a dead wife in Idaho. There was an attempted shooting of a relative. There were claims about light and dark spirits, chosen people, zombies, portals, and the end of the world. And in the center of it all were Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, two people whose relationship was wrapped in religious language but surrounded by death. For months, the public only knew JJ and Tylee were missing. Then, on June 9th, 2020, investigators searched Chad Daybell's property in Salem, Idaho. The answer to the question, where are the children, was found buried in the ground. This is the case of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, a story about belief, manipulation, family betrayal, murder, and the terrifying way ordinary lies became a chain of deaths. That is the reason this story works best when told as a slow build. The viewer should not feel dropped into a courtroom immediately. They should first feel the absence. 2 children missing from school, from phones, from family life, and from every place they should have been. Only after that absence is understood should the documentary begin widening the lens to the adults, the marriages, the belief system, and the repeated deaths surrounding the same small circle of people. Before the case became known by the words cult, apocalypse, and doomsday, it was the story of 2 children. Tylee Ryan was 16. She was Lori's daughter from a previous marriage, and people close to the family described her as bright, funny, and protective. In photos, she often looked like a normal teenager, trying to live inside a family that was becoming less and less normal. She had already been through chaos, divorces, conflict, moves, and the death of her father, Joseph Ryan, years earlier. J.J. Vallow was 7. He was the biological grandson of Kay and Larry Woodcock and had been adopted by Lori and her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. J.J. had autism and needed structure, school, medication, and adult care. He was lively, affectionate, and deeply attached to the people who loved him. For Kay Woodcock, J.J. was not just a grandson. He was a child she had helped bring into the family, a child she expected to hear from, see, and protect. That is why JJ's silence mattered. Families can drift apart, people can miss calls. But JJ was a child with needs. He was not someone who could disappear from school, vanish from medical routines, and simply be explained away. Tylee's disappearance was different, but just as alarming. She was older, so it was easier for Lori to create an excuse. A teenager could be said to be with friends, at school, or busy. But the people who knew Tylee began to sense something was wrong. She had effectively vanished after a family trip to Yellowstone National Park on September 8, 2019. JJ was last seen later that month, around September 22nd. The most painful part is that for months, the children were spoken about as if they were merely absent. Lori and Chad did not publicly search for them. They did not behave like parents desperate to find missing children. Instead, they moved forward with their lives, married in Hawaii, and lived as if the questions around them were an inconvenience. The investigation began with 2 missing children, but those children would eventually reveal a much larger story. Months before the children vanished, Charles Vallow was already telling people that something was deeply wrong. Charles was Lori's 4th husband and JJ's adoptive father.
Hey, she said with Gabe on the phone, come take the kids. I don't care what happens to them. Come take them.
By early 2019, his marriage to Lori had deteriorated into fear and confusion. In January of that year, he contacted police in Arizona and described behavior that sounded bizarre even before anyone understood the full case.
You're not Charles. I don't know who you are, what you did with Charles, but I can murder you now with my powers.
He said Laurie believed she had a special spiritual mission. He said she had threatened him. He said she no longer seemed like the same person. To officers, it may have sounded like a domestic dispute mixed with religious obsession. Charles was worried. Laurie, when police spoke to her, appeared composed. That contrast would later become a pattern in the case. The person raising the alarm seemed desperate, while the person at the center of the alarm sounded calm enough to make the situation seem less urgent. By July 2019, Charles and Laurie were separated. Charles came to a house in Chandler, Arizona to pick up JJ. Inside the home were Laurie, Tylee, and Laurie's brother, Alex Cox. A confrontation followed. Alex shot Charles, later claiming self-defense. At the time, the killing was not immediately treated as a murder conspiracy, but later, prosecutors would argue that Charles had been targeted.
911, where is your emergency?
I got in a fight with my brother-in-law and I shot him in self-defense.
If someone is described as evil, dark, or possessed, then harming that person can be reframed as spiritual duty instead of violence. Charles Vallow's death became one of the first major events in the chain. At the time, it looked like one tragedy. Later, investigators would see it as part of a pattern.
How do the house to say it? I don't know if she's going to flee with him, she's going to hurt him.
People close to Laurie and Chad kept dying, disappearing, or becoming targets. Charles was not warning police after everything happened. He was warning them before the most notorious parts of the case became public. That gives the footage a tragic weight. Viewers know what Charles could not fully prove at the time. His fear was not random paranoia. It was an early signal in a case where the people closest to danger often recognized it before the system did. Chad Daybell was not a celebrity in the normal sense. He was a self-published author whose books and talks focused on religious visions, near-death experiences, end times themes, and spiritual preparation. To some followers, he sounded like a man with special insight. To others, he sounded like someone building authority around prophecy.
If you've had this Holy Ghost experience testify to you, you're on the right path.
Laurie met Chad in 2018, and witnesses later described their relationship as intense and immediate. It was not only romantic, it was spiritual. They spoke in a private language of missions, past lives, light and dark ratings, castings, and people whose bodies were supposedly taken over by evil spirits. In that world, a normal family conflict could be transformed into a cosmic battle. A spouse was not just a spouse. A child was not just a child. A person who stood in the way could become a zombie, a dark spirit, or an obstacle in a divine plan. This is where the case becomes more frightening than a simple affair. Affairs can destroy marriages. Money can create motive, but Laurie and Chad's belief system gave those motives a different costume. It made ordinary human desires sound holy. If they wanted to be together, it could be described as destiny. If a spouse was inconvenient, that spouse could be described as spiritually dark. If children were in the way, prosecutors said, the language of possession helped turn them into targets. The people around Laurie and Chad noticed changes. Friends heard claims that sounded extreme. Family members saw relationships breaking apart. But the danger was hard to measure in real time. People can believe strange things without killing anyone. The tragedy of this case is that investigators and jurors later had to decide whether the beliefs were merely strange or whether they became a justification for murder. By the time Laurie moved closer to Chad in Idaho, the private spiritual world they shared was no longer just talk. It was moving into the lives of real people. In September 2019, Laurie moved to Rexburg, Idaho, close to where Chad Daybell lived. The move mattered because it brought the main people in the case into the same small geographic area: Laurie, her children, Chad, and Laurie's brother, Alex Cox. The last confirmed images of Tylee and JJ are now some of the most important visuals in the case. On September 8, 2019, Tylee was photographed at Yellowstone National Park with JJ and Alex Cox. It looks like a family trip. It looks ordinary, but investigators would later treat that day as the last known proof of life for Tylee. The next day, Chad sent a message to his wife Tammy about shooting and burying a raccoon on the property. At trial, prosecutors argued that the timing and wording of that message was suspicious because they lined up with the day investigators believed Tylee was killed and buried. JJ was still alive after Tylee disappeared. He was seen in Rexburg in September, including at his school and at Laurie's apartment. But by September 23, 2019, he was gone too. His school was told he would be homeschooled. His grandparents were not told the truth. People who asked questions received explanations. but not proof. This period is crucial because it shows the transition from missing person mystery to homicide investigation. There was no dramatic public announcement that the children were gone. There was no immediate report by their mother. Instead, life continued around their absence. Tylee disappeared first, JJ disappeared next. Laurie continued to collect benefits connected to the children. Chad remained close. Alex Cox continued appearing in the timeline, and by the end of September, 2 children had effectively vanished while the adults around them acted as if explanations were enough. The pressure finally reached police because Kay Woodcock would not stop looking for JJ. She was worried enough to ask for a welfare check, and that request forced Laurie to produce something she did not have, the child himself. In November 2019, Rexburg police went to Laurie's apartment looking for JJ. Instead of a simple answer, they entered a maze of explanations. Laurie said JJ was with her friend Melanie Gibb in Arizona. When police later spoke with Melanie, she eventually confirmed JJ was not with her. Investigators also learned that Laurie and Chad had asked Melanie to lie about JJ's whereabouts. This is one of the clearest moments where the case turned. A missing child case can begin with confusion, but when adults give false locations, ask friends to support false stories, and then leave town, confusion becomes evidence. After the welfare check, Laurie and Chad did not bring the children forward. They did not cooperate by showing police that JJ and Tylee were safe. Instead, they left Idaho and went to Hawaii. In photos and video from Kauai, they looked like newlyweds on vacation, not a mother and stepfather at the center of a missing children investigation. Police served Laurie with a court order, requiring her to physically produce JJ and Tylee.
Nice. Read Captain Word.
Peace evaluation, sir. Do you have any questions regarding that?
The deadline passed. The children remained missing. For the public, this was the point when the story became impossible to ignore. A mother whose children were missing was in Hawaii with her new husband. The children had not been seen for months. Relatives were begging for answers, and every new detail made the explanations sound less like mistakes and more like a cover story. The welfare check also gives the documentary its clearest investigative turning point. Until then, the story can still be framed as family confusion. After the false statement about Melanie Gibb, the narrative changes. The lie creates movement. Police check the claim. The claim fails. Friends are pulled into the timeline. Laurie and Chad leave Idaho. The case stops being a private family matter and becomes a criminal investigation moving across state lines. While the children were disappearing from Laurie's side of the story, Chad Daybell's first wife, Tammy Daybell, was also moving toward the center of the case. Tammy was a school librarian, a mother, and the woman Chad had been married to for decades. People who knew her described her as active, healthy, and involved in her community. That description matters because when she died suddenly in October 2019, her death was first treated as natural. There was no immediate autopsy. She was buried. Chad was a widower. But the weeks before Tammy's death raised questions. On October 9th, 2019, Tammy reported that a masked person had approached her outside her home and appeared to shoot at her with what was described as a paintball gun. Days later, on October 19th, she was dead. Within weeks, Chad married Laurie in Hawaii. The speed of the marriage shocked people who knew the timeline. Laurie's children were missing. Charles Vallow was dead. Tammy Daybell was dead. And now, Laurie and Chad were husband and wife. When investigators began connecting the deaths and disappearances, Tammy's body was exhumed. Her death was re-examined, and prosecutors later alleged she had been murdered. In court, Tammy's death became more than a separate tragedy. It became part of the same alleged plan that prosecutors said was built around Laurie and Chad's relationship, money, and spiritual language. Tammy's story is essential because it shows the case was not only about Laurie's children, it was also about the people who stood between Laurie and Chad. Charles was gone. Tylee was gone. JJ was gone. Tammy was gone. By the end of 2019, too many people connected to this relationship had died or disappeared for coincidence to feel believable. Tammy should not be treated as a side character. She is sometimes introduced only as Chad's first wife. But that description is too small. She had her own life, her own children, her own work, and her own community. The more the audience understands Tammy as a real person, the more disturbing the timing becomes. The attack report, the sudden death, the lack of an autopsy at first, and the fast marriage between Chad and Laurie.
You can see Chad sitting there kind of awkwardly as he doesn't seem to be expecting the police to be there in Hawaii serving the papers. And this detective goes on to testify about searching their rental vehicle that they had, trying to find any sign of the children where they may be, and the eerie things they did find, like the social security cards and credit cards of Tylee, JJ's iPad, but no sign of the actual children. And of course, we know that's right before she was arrested in Hawaii and brought back here.
By early 2020, the case had become national news. 2 children were missing. Their mother and her new husband were in Hawaii. The story involved deaths in multiple states, and the public was trying to understand how one family could be surrounded by so many emergencies. Lori was ordered to produce JJ and Tylee. When she did not, the legal pressure increased. In February 2020, she was arrested in Kauai. At that point, she was not yet charged with murdering the children. The charges were connected to desertion, non-support, and failure to comply with the order. But the arrest made one thing clear. Authorities no longer believed Lori's explanations. The Hawaii footage is important because it shows the disconnect at the heart of the case. Lori and Chad were living in a place associated with weddings, beaches, and escape. Meanwhile, families in Idaho and Arizona were begging for proof that the children were alive. This is also when the public began seeing the case as something larger than a local missing child investigation. Reporters dug into Charles Vallow's death. They examined Tammy Daybell's sudden death. They learned about Alex Cox, who had shot Charles and later died himself in December 2019. They learned about the strange religious claims surrounding Lori and Chad. For months, the search remained a search without bodies. That uncertainty was cruel to the families. A missing child case keeps people suspended between hope and dread. Every day without proof leaves room for imagined possibilities, even when the evidence begins pointing somewhere darker. Lori's arrest did not answer the biggest question. It only made the question louder. Where were JJ and Tylee? The answer would come months later. Not in Hawaii, not in Arizona, but in the soil behind Chad Daybell's home. On June 9, 2020, investigators searched Chad Daybell's property in Salem, Idaho. The search changed the entire case.
Remains of Lori Vallow's kids, JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan, were found. They were discovered in the backyard of Chad Daybell. Chad is Lori's 5th and current husband. On May 12th, Lori was convicted in the murder of her 2 kids and Chad's late wife, Tammy Daybell. Her sentencing is scheduled for July 31st.
Until that day, the public story was still built around the word missing. JJ and Tylee were missing children. Their family was still asking for answers. Lori was in custody, but the children had not been found. Chad was still outside the jail system. Then law enforcement began digging. The property was rural, open and quiet, but buried there were the remains of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. The discovery confirmed what relatives had feared and what investigators had been building toward. The children were not hidden, not staying with friends, not safe somewhere away from the public. They were dead, and their bodies had been concealed on Chad Daybell's land. For investigators, the location mattered. The remains were not found in some random place far from the people involved. They were found behind the home of the man Lori had married after the children disappeared and after Tammy Daybell died. The details of the recovery were extremely disturbing. Chad was taken into custody that day. His behavior during the search, his calls, and the evidence on the property became central to his later trial. The search ended the missing child phase of the case. From that point forward, the question was no longer, where are JJ and Tylee? The question became who killed them, who helped, and why so many deaths had followed Lori and Chad's relationship. Lori Vallow Daybell's Idaho trial began in 2023. Unlike many high-profile trials, cameras were not allowed to broadcast the testimony live, but courtroom audio became available. That meant the case reached the public mostly through audio, summaries, photos, and reporting, instead of full video. The prosecution's theory was direct. Lori, Chad, and Alex Cox used extreme religious beliefs to justify removing people they saw as obstacles. The state argued that the case was about money, power, sex, and control, with spiritual language used to make the crimes feel righteous to the people involved. Jurors heard about Charles Vallow's warnings. They heard about Lori's relationship with Chad. They heard about the last known sightings of Tylee and JJ. They heard from Kay Woodcock and other witnesses who had tried to find the children. They heard about social security benefits connected to the children after they were gone. They heard about text messages, phone data, and the way explanations changed when investigators asked simple questions. One of the most chilling parts of the trial was the contrast between belief and evidence. Laurie's world, as described by witnesses, was full of dramatic spiritual claims. But the courtroom case was built with practical evidence: records, devices, dates, locations, financial benefits, and the remains found on Chad's property. The defense did not have to prove Laurie was innocent. It only had to create reasonable doubt. But the state presented the case as a chain, where each link made the next one harder to explain away. On May 12, 2023, the jury found Laurie guilty on all charges in Idaho. The verdict covered the murders of Tylee and JJ, conspiracy connected to Tammy Daybell's death, and theft-related charges. For the families, the verdict did not repair anything, but it legally confirmed what they had fought to prove. The children had not vanished. They had been murdered. Chad Daybell's trial came after Laurie's, and it looked different to the public because cameras were allowed. Viewers could watch the courtroom, the lawyers, the witnesses, and Chad himself as prosecutors built their case. The state argued that Chad was not a passive figure pulled into Laurie's chaos. Prosecutors described him as a man who created and used a belief system that gave him power. He wrote and spoke about spiritual visions. He ranked people as light or dark. He claimed certain people were possessed or spiritually compromised. And according to the state, those claims helped mark real people for death. The prosecution also focused on practical motives. Chad had an affair with Laurie. Tammy stood in the way of that relationship. Life insurance was involved after Tammy's death. Laurie's children stood in the way of Laurie and Chad's new life together. Again and again, prosecutors argued, the spiritual language lined up with personal benefit. Chad's attorney argued there was not enough direct evidence tying Chad to the killings and suggested that Laurie, Alex Cox, or others were responsible. The defense also challenged the interpretation of forensic evidence and questioned whether Tammy's death had been murder. But the state had a long timeline. Jurors heard about the children last being seen alive, cell phone data, messages, the raccoon text, the burial sites, Tammy's death, the fast Hawaii wedding, and conversations that prosecutors said showed consciousness of guilt. They heard from investigators, relatives, experts, and people who knew Tammy. Chad's trial forced the jury to decide whether he was simply a strange religious author caught up in Laurie's world, or whether he was one of the architects of the world that led to murder. On May 30th, 2024, the jury gave its answer. Chad Daybell was found guilty. The legal endings in this case came in stages. For Laurie, the Idaho sentence came first. On July 31st, 2023, she received 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murders of Tylee and JJ and the conspiracy to murder Tammy Daybell. She also received additional sentences connected to other counts. In court, Laurie spoke about the spirit world and denied that anyone had been murdered. To the families, those words only deepened the pain. For Chad, the sentence was even more severe. After his 2024 conviction, the trial moved into a penalty phase. The jury recommended death. On June 1st, 2024, the judge followed that recommendation and sentenced Chad Daybell to death for the murders of Tammy Daybell, Tylee Ryan, and JJ Vallow. He also received additional prison time for insurance fraud convictions. The sentences gave the case legal clarity, but not emotional repair. JJ did not get to grow up. Tylee did not get to become an adult. Tammy did not get to continue her life with her children and community. Charles Vallow did not live to see his warnings understood. Families may be grateful that juries believed the evidence. They may feel relief that a defendant will never walk free. But there is no sentence that restores the victims. The courtroom can say guilty. The judge can impose life or death. But the damage remains in the families, in the children who are gone, and in the unanswered question that every viewer eventually asks: how did so many warning signs fail to stop what was coming? Even after the Idaho convictions, Laurie Vallow Daybell's legal story was not finished. Arizona still had its own cases.
Juror number 1, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 2, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 6, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 7, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 8, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 9, is this your true verdict?
Yes.
In 2025, Laurie stood trial in Maricopa County for conspiracy to commit first-degree murder in the death of Charles Vallow. This time, she represented herself. Prosecutors argued that Charles had not died in a simple act of self-defense, but as part of a plan involving Laurie and her brother, Alex Cox. They argued that money, Laurie's desire to be with Chad, and the same spiritual language used elsewhere in the case all played a role. The jury found her guilty. Then came the separate Arizona case involving Brandon Boudreaux, the ex-husband of Laurie's niece. Brandon had survived a drive-by shooting attempt in Gilbert, Arizona in October 2019. Prosecutors argued Laurie had conspired with Alex Cox in that attempted murder as well. Laurie was convicted in that case too. On July 25, 2025, an Arizona judge sentenced Laurie to 2 additional life sentences, with the possibility of parole after 25 years on each, to be served consecutively. Those sentences were added to the life sentences she was already serving from Idaho. By then, the case had stretched across years, states, and courtrooms. Arizona, Idaho, Hawaii, missing children, dead spouses, an attempted murder, strange beliefs, phone records, wedding photos, body cam footage, and 2 separate defendants convicted in the Central Idaho murders. The Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell case is remembered because of the shocking beliefs and the number of deaths. But the most disturbing part is simpler. The victims were not strangers. They were spouses, children, relatives, and people close enough to trust. The danger did not arrive looking like a monster. It arrived as a mother, a husband, a new marriage, and a belief system that made murder sound like destiny. And long after the verdicts, that is what makes this case so haunting. The people who should have protected JJ and Tylee became the people the evidence pointed back to. The mystery was solved in court through evidence, testimony, and verdicts. What remains is the human question. How does a mother stop protecting her children? How does a husband build a fantasy world that makes his wife disposable? How do friends and relatives hear alarming statements and still struggle to understand how serious the danger has become? This case is powerful because it shows that warning signs can appear in fragments. One police report, one strange text, one false story, one unexplained absence, one sudden death. Separately, each fragment can be doubted. Together, they formed a pattern no jury could ignore.